Yeah, I'm recording. Screen sharing. Okay, I think I'm recording. Yes. Okay, you guys, thank you for bearing with us. Yeah. Okay. So, no, you guys see I'm recording. I see that it's recording now. Excellent. So, Joy, let me set up the stopwatch. We do 2 minutes. Okay? You can begin.
Oh, can you zoom in? Okay. Oh. So my thesis, it seeks to define blurry and smudged edges between two-dimensional and three-dimensional entities, where the foreground and background layers blend together with the theatrics of a stage scene. So this scene consists of a collection of domestic objects, which creates community spaces and questions the role of the street. So if you zoom in a little bit on the left, there's a few images of Noguchi's gardens and playgrounds. I've also looked at the Smithson's urban project and the role of the street and the sidewalk, and also Henderson photographs of kids enjoying leisure and pastime recreational activities. So I'm looking at the idea of taking over and blurring the lines of the street with a curated set of objects. So you can also see, I've looked at the, sorry, go to the right a little bit. There's a commercial shoot by Eames, which they actually take these domestic objects like their chairs and bring it into the street and do some sort of like a takeover. I also see that one of my images haven't loaded, but it's pretty much a farmer's market aerial view of these community spaces that are created and kind of spill into the street and activate the street in a different way from its normal purpose. So for my program is to create discovery centers for learning, imagination, discovery, and possibly healing with these public playgrounds and community spaces in the city of LA. So I've looked at a couple of sites. They're all in downtown LA. I've highlighted several pockets. There's like Grand Hope Park, Angels Knoll, and also parking lots. Okay.
Excellent. So you have 3 sites and then you have an idea of miniature. I see there. A cabinet of curiosity of domestic elements.
Yeah, that's not my image, but I'm just replacing those.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Joy. Sepeng, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to begin your timer. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Zapom, and my thesis topic is the archisanitary block. The archisanitary refers to the architecture in the pandemic time. Coating a building is similar to have a person wearing a mask. It is a high-neck mask, not a theatrical mask. The word block not only means coloring a building, but also refer to the block as a piece of a city. The block works as an element of a piece of a city. I began my concept by looking at a simple block of Jerusalem. And the city has a lot of blocks and streets. And the block has also have many different elements, such as the pavement, the front yard, backyards, plants, and etc. The diversity of the elements consists of the block. Then I step into starting the material of isolating a building. It is a diversity of the elements make a block unique. The action of wrapping is a symbol of the abstraction and the creation. Giving new surfaces to the city in the time of the pandemic, it is a special time for us to understand and develop certain premises. So I choose some site in the on Google Map, and I studied the different buildings there. You can see different types of the building on the right hand, right here, and maybe they will have the different kind of the they can be different kind of elements in the block. So that's where I started. But next step, I will study the other elements in the blocks, and different elements I think will make the building more interesting, especially in the time of pandemic. Here on the right hand, the some models I made. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Great, so these are the models that, this is just to explain the models that he did for thesis prep. Okay, Jesse, your turn.
It looks like a bunch of my images aren't loaded, but.
There they are. I don't know, when I zoom in, can you see them now?
There's more of them are appearing.
There, there.
That are missing, but I'm Jesse. I want to use this time to talk about one of my current obsessions, like these marketing pictures of industrial objects. I think these are interesting because they are always groups of different but like objects. Sure, they embody a particular regime of industrial research and development, but I'm interested in them because they are products of research. My project tries to build a body of research through ritual self-pedagogy, the enacting of consecutive 2-week exercises that distribute my role as the student into nonlinear time, inhabiting multiple author roles and building up an unfinished body of work. Each assignment offers a way to re-examine and reposition the discourse around fundamental questions in architecture today: the mouse model, universal space, color, gray, and palette, miniature, type, and ambidexterity make up the 7 exercises. Thank you.
Excellent, Jesse, you used your 1 minute.
I yield my time.
Thank you.
I wanted another minute to think.
Yeah, are you giving it to Christina? Jesse, are all the images being seen right now? Okay. Okay, so, and again, I see video there, so people, of course, you can go in and you can look at the stuff. Okay, Christina.
Okay, hi. So my project is creating a design for the proposed Smithsonian American Women's History Museum. And my thesis prep was focused on questions of interior design, both in its relationship as a kind of secondary to architecture and various assumptions of it being kind of a women's field. So I've been looking at like wallpaper, as well as drapes and things like that. And so it's been a question now of how to make them 3-dimensional. So really just the past 2 weeks, I've been working on how to create form from fabric, as well as different techniques for different materials. Thanks.
Okay. Let me stop my alarm. Thank you, Christina. I tried to zoom in. I don't know if you guys got lost, but you also can tell me, go here or go there. Okay, Wendy, your turn.
Okay.
Yes, I see you.
Yes, yeah. Okay. So my thesis will be focusing on the role and design of embassies, U.S. embassies to be specific. Currently, I'm working on an archive of U.S. embassies that are listed on usembassy.gov. And this is a contact sheet of all the images I've collected thus far. And through this visual exercise, I noticed that there's a difference of how the Department of State, journalists, civilians, and Google Maps images these embassies and the discrepancies between the representations. And what I'm finding is how the US has presented an image in foreign territories through a particular building typology, the embassy. In some cases, it acts as a cultural messenger, in others, a show of force, and in a few, apathy. And I would like the conversation to be around the following. What should the role of the US embassy be, and what should the image of the US be abroad? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. So fine, oh, that's it, no? Yes. Yes, so we have 5 projects, so now we can begin a conversation.
Wendy, are you looking at creating a proposal for a specific embassy, or do you have an idea of where you want this research to go?
I don't have a site yet. So right now I'm just kind of looking at everywhere we have relationships with diplomatic relationships and where the diplomatic relationships don't exist. So currently it doesn't exist in like a couple of countries. So I think once I kind of finish this archiving and like a taxonomy of what US Embassy is, then I think I'll be closer to a site, but maybe that site will never be.
I have a question, Wendy. Is this new research, or this was something you had at prep?
This is new research.
So you first are going to create this catalog of embassies. Is this going to be part of miniatures? Do you think that part of the catalog might be part of miniatures, or what is your plan with that?
It's not going to be part of miniatures. I'm actually going to have a couple of different models that kind of pair with my thesis research prep research. This is kind of like what I'm working currently, and some questions that I keep coming back to that I really need to like solve or figure out before I feel like I can advance. So that's like, what should the US Embassy be in its host city?
Christine, I have a question. Are you noticing any types of behaviors between the projects or between the different fabrics, you know, just going on beyond just, like there might be a way the fabric's put together that kind of affects the graphic, but then also affects the physical quality of it?
Yeah, that's definitely something that I'm still kind of working out. I don't know if Matthew Au is here, but I would say thank you to him because he suggested Clo 3D, which is this fabric modeling system, which is designed for modeling clothes. So I've been trying to use that and basically adjusting the physics of the fabrics to get them to hold certain forms. But I've been kind of doing it separate from the texture element of it. So my next step over the weekend is to try to go back to the forms to have them respond with more like the materiality of the fabric. So it's like a knit thing would act like a knit thing, whereas now it's a little bit fake because of that.
Are you also doing physical models?
No.
Okay.
I like that top right with the wireframe kind of. That's.
Oh, thanks.
Christina, there is a 3D modeling software called Marvelo. It's more for the stimulations of fabrics in animations and filmmaking. I guess Saleh is using his thesis. Maybe you can talk to him.
Okay, great, thanks.
I think it's interesting, your decision to take upon yourself traditions of interiority, wallpaper, textiles, which are kind of inscribed within, you know, a gendered tradition of space making practices. And I don't know, there's a lot of sort of literature on like weaving at the Bauhaus, and you're probably into all of that. But I was also thinking about Louise Bourgeois. There's a couple of moments where if you kind of zoom in, you start to see sort of stitches and seams. And, you know, for Louise Bourgeois, she had kind of deep personal connections to the act of like tapestry and weaving and connecting, which were kind of psychopathological, in the sense that you know, she did all of those sculptures of her mother as a spider, and you know, would tell these stories about her first job working in the family tapestry factory was to cover over all of the genitals for export to the US market. And so for her, the textile was a site of kind of intense sort of gender trauma. So I just wondered whether whether for you the textile and the interior and so on, whether just how they resonate for you. Are they emancipatory? Are they pathological? But like, how do you kind of feel about it, and how do you want people to feel about it?
I think I'm sure it's going to be some sort of combination. I'll have to take a look at more of her work with tapestries. It's funny, I had some of her, because I had done all this stuff with Woman House, and she has those kinds of, I think, a sculpture and a painting where it's a combination of like a woman and a home. So I'll have to look at that other stuff as well. I think at the moment, I'm just trying to really create as many things as possible with certain textiles. Some of these, it's hard to see. I'm working with images of lace and weaving those together with other things. So some of it does kind of have that kind of connection to, you know, some feminine tropes and things like that. So I'm just gonna create the largest palette possible and then come back and see how I feel, I think, at the moment.
Also, do you know her memorial to the murdered witches that she did with Peter Zumthor?
Oh, no.
That's not the official title, but it's somewhere in
But I'm
Scandinavia. And it's made out of silk.
Christina, I had this, I bought for my kids, this is a book called Cloth Lullaby. It's her childhood stories. It's a really beautiful, it tells that story of like her childhood fixing textiles, you know,
oh, wow.
for her mother's business. That's herself. And then her father started buying her. So at the beginning, it was a lot of the weaving and a lot of the dyeing because they live next to the river. It's a really beautiful story. It's a children's story, but it's really a really nice book. So this is called Cloth Lullaby.
Oh, amazing, thanks.
So maybe you can find some images online. I don't know if you want to buy a children's book, but I would. I mean, it's wonderful to see. I think it's great to Sean's to see her history. I mean, and it's so personal. So this idea that it becomes kind of personal, I think it's, yeah.
Christina, can I ask a kind of boring architectural question?
Sure.
It seems like you're really working in 3D right now. Like it seems like you're generating these forms very much, and it's all about this like crafting and creating sort of as you might with your hands of, you know, clay, or if it were something that you were knitting or something. And I think about like the patterns that are used to make clothing, or the patterns that are used to weave, and how much they can often resemble a plan drawing. You know, like there's like these questions of these line weights and there's grids and all these things, but folding, right? But in the end, they're not meant to be read flat. They're meant to be like bent up and turned into something more like a sleeve or more like a collar or whatever. Is there any relationship between the 2D and the 3D that you're like working in right now, or is it like,
yeah. So what's funny is that what you're describing is like my secret process, where basically I had modeled these forms in Rhino, and then I smashed it to unroll it into a 2-dimensional form, and then I took it into Clo 3D and I sewed it together like you would sew clothing. So there was a bit of figuring out like how would you make a dome out of fabric, and some of that, and then I was kind of thinking about it being like, oh yeah, it like does kind of look like a reflective roof plan. So you bringing it up makes me think that, you know, maybe it shouldn't necessarily just live in the process world, and I should think about more about what it means.
I mean, yeah, I think it's just really interesting. I mean, they're really like provocative forms, all of them, you know what I mean? And so I immediately want to like cut a plan or something like that, because I'm just like stuck in, you know, I'm stuck as an architect now. So I like have to think about it in section or whatever, but like, yeah, I just mean to suggest it. I don't mean to suggest that it needs to be there, but I'm just curious, like how you fit in your own like pattern making and your own plan making, like into these objects.
Yeah, thanks.
They're really great. Yeah.
Thanks.
I think they're really beautiful too, Christina. And I must say that having worked with textiles and the idea of textiles and composites for about 20 years, there's something I think that would be important to maybe include in your kind of line of thought, which has to do with the history of the jacquard loom, which is really the origins of computation. And there's lots and lots of material now online about that. But what's curious to me is that you're treating this as a texture mapping problem, a surface problem, and actually weaving as a line problem. So I would just keep in mind that there's different modeling techniques, and you're calling something fabric or textile, which is actually pixels, and you're referring to it as a woven shape or a kind of a material that has woven properties, but it's not. And I think it's all fine to have these contradictions, but it's just not to be kind of naive about them. It's to really understand fundamentally that you're in computational space and you're not in material space, you're in digital material space, and it has a different kind of history and a different kind of possibility.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. That's really important.
I'm trying to write down the quotes. I might make mistakes, so you guys can edit it. Like,
that's okay.
I don't know.
I've got notes too.
Yash, I don't know what you said, so you just, I know that you asked Ale. You have to ask something. So you can complete it, Yash, over there. Should we move to any other students? You guys have any?
Jesse, I was wondering if you could talk about your kind of like collections of objects, because I think that they're really interesting.
Yeah, I think they're more kind of like aspirational of what I want to make as far as like models go, things that are all slightly different and like somehow kind of fit for some purpose. I also like these pictures because they're kind of like almost Dada, or sort of like they're kind of like, I don't know, I've just been trying to draw as much inspiration from them as I can. I don't know, they're also small and they're manageable. You know, they're multiple, each sort of, you know, like in the bottom right, those are all like cutting bits for, you know, lathes or milling machines. They'll have like these just insane, huge amounts of embodied energy and research and like things behind them, but we can still kind of appreciate them as these kind of like small, like cute collections. I don't know.
So for your thesis prep magazine, you made a collection of exercises. Are you considering making possibly like a manual for these small artifacts?
Oh, like a, no, I hadn't thought of that at all, but I'll consider that definitely.
You might be making a syllabus.
For miniatures?
I don't,
a miniature syllabus?
That's a good idea. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. I like that.
No, I have a plan for my miniatures, which is to recreate the silver party at the Bauhaus in miniature. So I've been trawling the internet for any sort of available photos, but it's mostly about the kind of collective ritual of self-transformation through a kind of material or exercise of becoming silver that I think is kind of interesting.
Oh, then you need to check out the Merce Cunningham movie, because they actually do a reconstruction of the entire dance that Warhol first did the pillows for. It's a really beautiful reconstruction.
Can you drop a link to where we can find that? That sounds really interesting.
The Merce Cunningham movie?
Yes.
Sure.
Jesse, I would talk to Sean Cooper. Also, Sean, you're there. I mean, I think after Career Day and his way of looking at dance in novel ways beyond the European-centric way of looking at the Bauhaus. I mean, even if you look, even if you look at Merce Cunningham, the Bauhaus version in America, the Black Mountain College, I mean, you can begin at the Bauhaus. I would find a way you can extrapolate that to something other, or even to something that has been, somehow transformed, something like that. I don't know, Sean, if you have any comments on that, but I thought that was, and it could be a dance, like even though the Bauhaus was the performance, but how, I don't know. I think that I would challenge it.
Yeah.
Like
well,
Cunningham did challenge.
Yeah, of course, they were great fans of jazz at the Bauhaus. There was a jazz band, and that was the kind of great age of jazz, I guess. But I mean, I do think those collections of objects are quite amazing. And is the idea that they're combined with rituals? Are they the kind of outcome of your ritual procedures, or the accessories of ritual transformations that you need to kind of use them?
Yeah, probably I saw them more as outcome, but I think also things for the use, because I think since it is a kind of pedagogical idea, the use and the outcome are somehow closely related compared to if we were talking in other fields.
I had here, since I had the, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just had the book. I wanted to say how the beginnings, one connection of the diagram of Albers to dance. I mean, one way of looking at collection of elements. If you look at, sorry, I had I don't want to Google, my computer doesn't have enough more memory. But if you look at the Black Mountain College and the way that Merce Cunningham actually began his, his career and some of the dances, and you see in a version of the Bauhaus in America, which is this. So I don't know. I think that that's what I meant. Sorry that I interrupted you, Sean, but that's what I meant by that, finding the offsprings, the kind of the variations to that original. But I love the idea of the miniature dance set in the 1 foot by 1 foot. Wendy, I had a question for you, because I really like this image here. Like, I'm not sure. I mean, I see this kind of fog building as an embassy. So I don't know, what is that? Is that because when you get footage, it doesn't show an embassy because of security? I mean, what is exactly this image? But this is a great departure for an embassy, just erasing it.
That's exactly what's going on, Florencia. So that's kind of what I was talking about.
You found
earlier.
it, yeah.
I found it. So I was going through and trying to find the best image of that embassy, but some of the embassies, when you kind of go through Google Maps, it won't even let you get close to the embassy. And when I'm on the Google map view or street view of this embassy, it has an entire block that is blurred out. So that's why I was kind of interested, or it was interesting while doing this exercise of like what kind of images are out there of these embassies, and like US doesn't really have control over these images, but the ones that are on their website are really nice. They're really romanticized. The one to the left of it is the Indian embassy, which you can find on their website. And other times they don't have images at all, and they just have like this empty white box that just gives you an email to call them if you want to get in touch or you want to know where that embassy is. I don't
like
know
the
where this
idea. But
go ahead.
Wendy, I like the idea. I mean, I like the idea that instead of these photos, you would do a collection of these photos.
Oh, kind of just erasing
you know what
them?
I mean? I mean, like what you find online. I mean, like, I don't know.
If I may maybe
like,
interject.
Yeah, say nice there.
Sorry guys, I'm driving, but Wendy, I feel like you're kind of hiding like another portion of the thesis, which is what exactly what Florencia is pointing at, which is the kind of dimension of obfuscation and camouflage. And in some ways, like, I completely agree with Florencia that this image of the kind of blurry navigation of the embassy is the aesthetic departure for your thesis. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in some ways, like, the archive that you're making of embassies is actually precisely this type of stuff, which is the stuff that you find, let's say, in the media, the stuff that you find on Google Maps, essentially the camouflage and the unseen versions of these embassies. And that's the way I understand your thesis, is that that's the aesthetic departure. And some of the stuff that you're starting to produce is about essentially manipulating these existing images as a possible, like, set of rules or instructions for designing your own hidden embassy, let's say.
Zaina
I think
said
that
it
for
best.
you.
What?
I said Zaina said it best. She said it. Yeah.
No, but
yeah, it's true.
Maybe just to, like, clarify, like, I think the image you're showing today is one portion of the work, but that the aesthetic project is exactly where Florencia is pointing out, which is the kind of blurriness, the camouflage, the kind of how an embassy can not be seen, essentially.
Yeah, that's what this thesis research for prep was all about, and you can see it in my book that's on the other side of the mural board. So kind of my instinct of going with an embassy based on that research was kind of spot on. And while getting deeper into the research, it's just it's revealing itself.
With the Google Map photo, I'm kind of thinking now in relation to Christina's process, and like the technique is sort of facilitated by the software or the tools. And so if your tools are more of like public access or like what's accessible via Google Maps, it's kind of like an interesting way to think about like form building or something. This like really like pinhole kind of view of the world.
I would think about, to Sam's point, Wendy, I would start to let this help you figure out miniature model, as a test. So maybe that image might say a lot. I don't mean that you buy a fog machine. You don't buy a fog machine, but something you do. Excellent.
Yeah. Okay.
It's also the question, I think, of the like visible invisible or the invisible visible. And there's a kind of paradox about your collection of images, which is that, yeah, in one sense the blurry embassy is, you can't see it, but on the other sense it's like so obvious as an image because it's blurry. And so there's that sense in which actually is kind of camouflage is a highly visible expression of the state power to invisibilize. So in that sense, the blur, the smear, to me, if you were to translate that into a kind of, I think about this in a kind of the London embassy, in that the most visible thing about that building is its power to close itself off militaristically from the rest of the city. And whilst making it look like an inviting garden. So it contains all of the great kind of contradictions of state. And so I wonder how that kind of plays into your, because it's easy to make an embassy disappear. You just make it look not like an embassy. You just make it look like any old other building. But the function of an embassy along the lines of a kind of American embassies tends to be that you make it bombastically obvious that the embassy has the power to exclude and foreclose all forms of visibility. It's kind of expression of totalitarian power to be visibly invisible. So
Yeah.
that's just a kind of set of logics that might run through your project.
I've definitely thought of all those things, and the thing that I'm having trouble grappling is like the ethics and the morals that obviously is inherent in designing something that's for the state. And so that's why I wanted to create this conversation. This one in particular is kind of like, how do I move past that, or like what actually should the image of the US Embassy be to its host cities?
Do you know the David R.J. project? What's it called? The
one in DC?
No, the African cities, where he went and documented all of the capital cities of every nation in the continent of Africa. I mean, there's a similar taxonomic visual logic. I don't know how many there are, like 70 or something. And just very detailed documentary photographs of all of those cities and their kind of metropolitan institutional state buildings with a similar kind of problematics that you have, which is at some level to try to define what constitutes post-colonial modernity realistically, in terms of all of the permutations of the decolonized, or sometimes partially decolonized state in the continent of Africa, in order to try to find in that some indication of a destiny for an African or Pan-African or Black modernity, civic modernity, which would later become tested out in some of his projects, including the museum in Washington, D.C. But I wonder if that might serve as a kind of guide for the way that you're working.
Yeah, I have pulled up, it's a page on the GSD talking about an exhibition that goes over this. So I'll definitely take a look, and it looks very similar. And I think it would be helpful. Thank you.
Cool. I mean, he published it as like a 5-volume sort of encyclopedia. It's in the library, but unfortunately, it's so bad we can't access that stuff easily now.
We have the Google Library. So thank you, guys. So we move to our first two projects with Joy and Sepeng. I put some of the comments here for everybody, so you don't have to copy them from the chat, but as you know, we get some comments on the chat, it's easier to do a print screen.
Joy, can I ask you a question? It's kind of a clarification question. Were you saying that you were looking at the sort of like blurry edge between the 2-dimensional and the 3-dimensional?
Yeah, so that was like the departure point for my thesis prep research. And then I started looking into like how it can actually like materialize this. And then I was thinking about like figural edges of, you know, things that could be placed on the street and kind of like questioning the role of the street and something that could take over. For example, like a community space or spaces that can occupy it in a different way.
Mm-hmm. So how it's also like maybe like, yeah, I mean, it's interesting sort of like the negotiation between like the playground and the street, right? Because those things are in so many ways, they can be the same, right?
Yeah.
Like the street can be a playground, and the playground can also act as a sort of place where anyone finds themselves. So there's this like, you know, capital P public sort of like interaction. Yeah, I'm kind of just like asking that question because, or to clarify, because it's also like, it makes me think of a doorway or something, or like the public entry of something that does face on like a big public street, and how like when the street becomes the building, right? It's sort of like the same question of like when play gets serious, you know, like when you're a kid and you might be like playing with your friends and all of a sudden someone gets hurt and everyone like stiffens up and kind of like looks at each other. It's like when does the sort of like pool of the like anything goes that happens on the street like turn into something a bit more serious and sinister, like the architecture, right? Like when does the architecture like start? I think is yeah, it's super interesting, like a little provocative.
Mm.
I was going to say, I can't quite see it, but the top image where Yash put the comment, love the scan, is that a point cloud scan that you made?
So that was a photogrammetry scan that I made. And I had just tried to reveal some of the edges. And this was when I was looking at staging a scene. And then I overlaid it with the actual point clouds and kind of trying to make it a little bit more 3-dimensional and seeing how those points can occupy that space in a different way.
Because I was going to say, like, of all of the images that you've got assembled, to me, that's the only one which is really blurry.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me think of point clouds in general. And like one of the outstanding qualities of the point cloud is that it is really blurry and it genuinely blurs the edges, but there are no edges in a point cloud. And so kind of made me think, well, had you thought about doing the whole project in a point cloud? That if that is genuinely the contemporary space without edges, why not kind of take that paradigm upon yourself and say, you know, because you could quite feasibly argue that like now in the very contemporary moment and in the near future, it is the point cloud in which the street really exists.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you think of the way that like LiDAR scanners are used in like engineering surveys, in surveys for civic works, i.e. the basis upon which all civic planning decisions are now made in regard to the street is the point cloud. So might you not say the street now exists as a point cloud, therefore as an architect of the street I must work in a point cloud, because that is the surveying, infrastructural, policy, political, aesthetic basis of the contemporary street.
Mm-hmm.
And that photographs and drawings and maps and even like Google image photo scans, those are actually all by now kind of archaeological. There's the point cloud now, which is, and your use of the blurry part seems to me to be an intuition towards that end. you know Liam's film, Where the City, what's it called? Where the City Doesn't See. Is that what it's called? You know the film, it's the first film to have been filmed only with LiDAR scanners.
I'm gonna have to look that one up.
Where the City Sees or Doesn't See? I'm sure it's about not being seen. But Yash says it's called Where the City Sees. I'm not sure it's called that.
Oh, Where the City Can't See.
Can't see, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe you can put the link there. And
I found it.
Yeah, because then you have the question. You know, that seems it's very appropriate to use LiDAR point cloud scanning for a discourse upon visibility and representation within the city. In the context where the street is visibilized by the point cloud, i.e. is rendered perceptible to the eyes of the state, to administration, to policy, to legislation, to control, how do you then find invisibilities within the street? And that film is kind of a story about, what are they? Are they kind of taxi drivers or something? Like they're defined by their position in the system of social reproduction and labor. They try to find ways. How do you escape the surveillance of the state? How do you disappear? How do you kind of pulverize? How do you atomize into the point cloud? And I think in the narrative of the film, they find a way to do this by kind of like rave dances in the woods or something.
Cool, thanks for that reference.
yeah, I think that Joy, I tried to collect as much as I could, but it's recorded anyway. But I I think those are great points. We'll talk later. And yeah, thank you for adding the. But I selected these 3 images. I think that for miniatures, rather than staying within collecting, giving it a hint to that idea. I mean, I really like Jesse's comment. Who was Max? Who said it? Max or Jesse? Where did I put the note? Max. Playground and the street as one. I like that. Yeah, Max, you were talking about the threshold from the door to the house. And, like this image, the threshold, I mean, you're talking about that, the street to the living room, that is like, it's so blur. I mean, or it could be just a piece of paper. So I think that the point cloud, and to all the comments from Sean, the point cloud, I think those are great. So just summarize there. So, or final, I'm trying to also check on I say multitasking. It's like, okay, yes. Trying to see if there's a good comment that I copy and paste. So finally, any comments to Sepeng? These are some of the studies he's doing. He's creating his own blog. I like this reference very much. Did you put cool stuff chocolate or somebody put it there? No, I don't know. Are you there, Sepeng? I don't see you.
I think this is Yash.
Yes. Oh, Yash. Okay. Yeah, that's what I was trying to put the signatures. Yash, you have to say something now about it.
I just find the idea of making the city out of chocolate really interesting. I did make one in thesis.
Delicious.
That's why I was like, it's cool.
Yash is a very good cook, we've found out, so.
I did not know that.
I have kind of a simple question, maybe. Like well, I have to say, I really love the this thing here on the bottom middle that has like the different types of whatever the ways that like houses are built across the U.S. or something. It's a really interesting collection. And the non sequitur is like it seems like you're always wrapping up things that like are kind of soft and round and like have a sort of smoothness to them, which are like really easy to wrap. But your model has staples, which would produce a totally different result if you wrapped it up, right? It would poke a bunch of holes in the plastic around it. I'd be curious, like, you know, what some of the differences are, like what comes out of any other experiments, or if you have done other experiments with sort of like wrapping up different things, and like what the original form has to do with the sort of like produced form afterwards.
Actually, it's developed from the bottles. So this shows the progress how I try to wrap everything. At first, I tried to create a block and use the block and try to wrap the block. So the C as you see at the bottom, the picture C at the bottom is the original exercise I made, and then the Mickey Mouse marks there is the next I tried, and then I tried the vacuum bag to wrap out the air, and it is I think I didn't put the image there. Oh, maybe that one. This one. But I didn't find out.
Use a vacuum cleaner, by the way, you guys. A vacuum cleaner, vacuum forming. No heat gun here, only the vacuum cleaner, no? Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm still trying to find a better way to do the wrapping. Maybe not a wrapping, since I tried to create a system of the venting, I think, because each building will have the different venting system, because they have different elements. You will try different method to wrap a house or wrap a yard or something. So maybe it was like the thing that you see when you do the termite test of the house, you will see that we'll have a tent to cover all the house. Maybe I will do maybe some different kind of the method to wrap everything. I'm still trying to find out a good solution.
I would say I really like the idea of wrapping. I like the idea of the cordon sanitaire. And I mean, Zipeng, we spoke before about kind of obsessions with personal protective equipment, but I feel like you could become a wrapping obsessive. I'm sure there is some kind of obsessive compulsive disorder among people where you just cannot stop wrapping stuff over and over and over again. And you're kind of obsessed with sealing and, I don't know, just the different natures of wrapping. And I think, obviously, there's like wrapping the present, there's wrapping the suitcase in one of those, you know, aircraft safe wrappers that has that special rotary wrapping machine. There's the lipo wrap. You know, what's that kind of slimming system where you wrap your thighs in cellophane? And you can see images of it online. It's really kind of weird and beautiful and perverse. And so I think you could find, because a lot of the images you found are quite like loose wrapping. To me, they don't look like they've been done by really expert wrappers. To me, an expert wrap is often a really tight wrap. And I also think, you know, it's very interesting because there's a whole history of like Buckminster Fuller and the dome that seals, you know, Manhattan or wherever he happens to drop it, that creates a kind of microclimate. But you're doing something different. It's like Florencia said, you're putting that dome down and then you're sticking a vacuum in. And so that dome kind of then sucks and attaches very tightly to the buildings. And I'm going to say, if you're going to go with this wrapping, like your bottom right-hand corner one, I feel like you've just kind of laid the plastic over there. Whereas I feel you could be much more aggressive in the way that you tie that stuff down. Because I mean, when it comes to, like, you know, textile architecture and those kind of canopy systems, there's an amazing technical architectonic language of tension rods, stitching, seams, printing over that. What is it HDPE or whatever they call it? They're
ETF.
also, sorry, say it again, Devin?
ETF.
That's right. And ETFE, and it also, you know, on some of those systems, the pillow systems, they have air in them and pumps and support systems. So I just feel there's a whole level of technical complexity which is to be explored and then theorized. But I feel until it gets to a level of kind of technical specificity, I think at that level, then you can start being more kind of theoretically sophisticated as well. I think the two things go hand in hand.
I think that's great. Sepang, you have to be rapper sophisticated, and then we'll move into theoretically sophisticated. Thank you guys for all the comments. I think they're calling me from the other room, or they're texting me. Faris is texting me. They're ready to wrap up. We're going to do a wrap up together. So thank you, everybody. I think this is great. Remember, these are open. These chats, they stay, so you can always bring a comment, put it back there. I try to copy what was in the chat. If not, please copy paste what you had. Let me do another print screen of this before we move on, and then I'm going to stop share. Okay, let me tell. I don't know how we do this. What do I know now? We finish. So I'm getting help from Faris to see what we do. Do I leave room? Do we leave the room? Or he has to bring us back? Anyway, thank you. I think that it was very helpful. At least, you know, also, oh, Eric is there. You know, we're going to have a review with Eric. I think we might open, you know, for some of the students, just take the comments and put in the main. I love you guys, how you're helping us advisors. You know, this was great. It gives us ideas so we can continue developing. So, yes. Sorry, Jesse, what did you mean leftovers? Before we're taking to the room?
Oh, I really love Ipeg's project because it's like, you know, I think it is like theoretically sophisticated, where like Robert Venturi had his one object, he had the duck. You know, I feel like that project could have the leftover or the leftovers, like the different kind of house style diagram. I felt like was either a kind of incomplete project to expand any of these styles across the United States, or a collection of leftovers that are continually receding, and that they would be wrapped up. And just like with the kind of like hygiene and like preservation, it seemed like the leftovers, the bits of food that we end up
Sepang, that's a good title. This is a good thesis title. Write it down, leftover. That's a great thesis title. Thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you for your
Write
suggestion.
it down. That's a good thesis title. I think, okay, now, yes, thank you. I like that, the leftovers. So write it down for thesis. You own Jesse something on Amazon. This is what we always do. When somebody finds a thesis title, some other student, we did it last year, they had to buy chocolate or something like that. Okay, return to main session. We're back. So this was a special experience of this moving from room to room. Thank you guys, thanks everybody for joining this. You please send me comments if you think this work. We keep on doing breakout rooms. If not, we might find some other solution. We do, you know, I'm getting more accounts for Zoom for thesis, so we might do different Zooms. Otherwise, I thought that this was, I don't know if any of you were going in and out of different rooms. Otherwise, I listen all room in our side. What is it? Faris, what he's saying, I'm not sure. We're just getting a count now, then Ronnie, yeah. Oh, I think that was an answer from another chat, but we can follow that.
I sent
Yes.
the form for 3D printing in the shop.
Yes. So since I have you all here, Faris sent out that form. That form, as you know, we're going to give priority to students that are not in town, anywhere that is like far from LA, that you cannot bring a model, so you don't have to be FedExing it and stuff like that. So please fill out the form. It's a private form. It's not shared with the rest. It's just for us to know and to work with the shop to know how we can do it. Remember that what we're planning is that for midterm review, we have availability to more things, also as more things open. So please follow up with Faris and Kyle on that. Any general comments? Yes, Marceline, the Zoom in the other side, did it work out?
It was great. I think, I actually think the smaller groups work really well, because we first did the screen share and then we just got all together in the grid where we could all see each other. And then occasionally if somebody wanted to refer to something, we'd pull back into the Miro. But I think it was really, really great. And everybody was talking and it's fun.
Excellent. I think that even we could break into 3 breakout rooms. So I think that please send me your comments for those of you that were presenting. You know, remember Christina, we were talking the last time. You know, thank you for requesting that we break into 2 groups. It might be that we might break into 3 groups. So let's see. You know, just let me know. Okay, everybody. See you again at 5. And thank you for all your comments. They're very helpful for everybody, for students and for faculty. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.